My dear late friend and indefatigable human rights advocate, who was known as Nyok Nhi An Win, certainly thought so. It was Nhi who stuck with me from the beginning and who encouraged me to write this book, which I've dedicated to her memory. Few modern-day Vietnamese boat people have had the opportunity to be heard in English, she insisted. And yet, when I tried to get the book published in Australia, I was met with the same refrain: refugees are not a commercially viable topic. The list of rejections I received over 8 long months stretches as long as my arm. We are only here today thanks to the interest of a publisher in the Appalachian Mountains, McFarland Books, based in Jefferson, North Carolina, who I discovered shares my passion for refugees and to whom I remain eternally grateful. The chosen title for my book was a compromise. McFarland wanted Vietnam's modern-day boat people so that you, our readers, would know what the book is about. I insisted on adding, and you can't see it, it's at the bottom, Bridging Borders for Freedom, because I wanted to highlight what can happen when people of all nationalities and faiths, or no faith, band together to help those in need. To go further, I wanted to show that it is within the power of each of us to make a difference, especially if we join forces and work together. This is the story of several Vietnamese refugee families and how a disparate group of volunteer advocates from Australia, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, the US, and Canada came together to help them on their eventual journey to liberty. As my friend Nhi pointed out, it is a tale that has not received much attention in Western media, thereby making it, I think, even more important to share, especially as we celebrate the family's hard-won resettlement in Canada. As I explained in the introduction, until I read an article about Tran Thi Tan Ngoan, excuse my pronunciation, and her 4 children in the Australian National newspaper in late July 2016, headlined "Kids Orphaned as Vietnam Jails Parents Over Asylum Bid," I had not even realised that boat people were still attempting to flee Vietnam. This is the page that the same newspaper devoted to the book earlier this year, sharing the introduction, which explains how this story came to pass. And I understand that one of our former refugee, younger generation will be reading from my introduction later. From March 2015 to July 2016 alone, the Australian Navy intercepted 113 Vietnamese asylum seekers in 3 separate incidents. So you can see there an example of a boat that families used to try and escape Vietnam, even recently, and that is an Australian naval ship which patrols the oceans and picks people up. And there have been more since, even as recently as in the last few months. So you can see here, this is a very recent article. It's from May of this year. And again, 4 Vietnamese boat people trying to escape Vietnam. They are all picked up and returned. Summarily assessed at sea by 2 officials using Australia's controversial expedited enhanced screening process, as it is called. It's not very enhanced at all, let me tell you. They were each found not to warrant protection and were forcibly returned by what's called boat take-back to Vietnam, where those regarded as organisers were incarcerated, despite Australia's initial insistence in April 2015 that it had received reassurance from its Vietnamese counterparts that they would not be punished. The Australian government has a short memory. In previous country information reports on Vietnam, so this is a country information report, so this is what people like myself, migration agents, migration lawyers, use. We have to follow government policy in whether people are going to get granted a visa or not. So this is the latest report from 2022. But in previous earlier reports, Australia's Department of Foreign Affairs gave a nod to the experience of our Vietnamese refugee families, noting, and I quote, that long-term detention, investigation and arrest is conducted only in relation to those suspected of involvement in organising people smuggling operations. The department understands this to be the case in relation to several individuals who were on board vessels returned to Vietnam in 2016. But in its most recent report of January 2022, the department completely and blatantly obliterates any memory of what these families endured on their forcible return to Vietnam. And I quote again, authorities occasionally question returnees from Australia upon their arrival in Vietnam. The interview process generally takes between 1 to 2 hours and focuses on obtaining information about the facilitation of any illegal movement on their part. The department is not aware of any cases in which returnees from Australia have been held overnight for that purpose. The family's experience, as I detailed them in this book, tells a different story. And here you have Mrs. Lua. So this is an article which became headline news very briefly in 2017. And you can see the actual truth of the situation, which was Vietnamese asylum seeker returned by Australia says a bullet would be better. So there's the reality contrasted with the Australian government